Anne was tired, so incredibly tired of being the person everyone else wanted him to be. The obedient employee, the dutiful son, the agreeable friend. It was like wearing a suit that was 2 sizes too small every single day. The seams were splitting, the fabric was suffocating him. One morning, he just stopped. He stopped trying to cram himself into that tiny, constricting box. He started showing up as himself. At work, the shift was immediately noticed. The company, a well-oiled machine of conformity, didn't like this new gear that refused to grind along quietly. They demanded he change back, revert to the old Anne, the predictable, manageable Anne. He refused. Flat, simple no. It felt foreign on his tongue, but also exhilarating. The reprimand came swiftly, a formal slap on the wrist. But what stung more was the silence that followed. His colleague Min, who had once been a close friend, began to keep his distance, as if Anne's newfound authenticity was a contagious disease. But then there was Lan, a whirlwind of color and chaos, a true artist. She saw the storm brewing and Anne didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in closer. "But you're going to burn it all down," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "At least be honest about why you're holding the match." Her words were a permission slip he didn't know he needed. "So," Anne wrote. He poured all his frustration, all his observations about the crushing weight of conformity, into a scathing, brutally honest essay. He sent it out, a message in a bottle cast into the vast ocean of publishing, and the ocean was silent, and no one would touch it. Rejection after rejection piled up, each one a small sting. But something had shifted inside him. He didn't stop writing. He wrote for an audience of one, himself. The words flowed, no longer for approval, but for survival. His family was disappointed. They didn't understand this sudden rebellion. Where was the son they had raised? The one who always did the right thing, the sensible thing? They waited for an apology, for him to admit his mistake and come back to the fold. For the first time in his life, Anne didn't apologize. A strange guilt pricked at him, the ghost of his former self whispering accusations in his ear. But underneath it, there was a new feeling, a lightness. It was as if he'd have been carrying a boulder on his shoulders his entire life, and had only just realized he could set it down. One evening, the old man, a quiet neighbor who seemed to have seen it all, asked to read Anne's manuscript. Read for hours, his face unreadable. Finally, he looked up, a slow smile spreading across his wrinkled face. "So, you finally rebelled," he said, his voice raspy with age. "Nothing has changed," Anne replied, a hint of bitterness in his tone. "The world is still the same." The old man chuckled. "But you're still alive," he said gently. "And you're seeing it for what it is." That's more than most people can say. Anne didn't fully understand, but the words settled in his heart like a warm stone. A few weeks later, Lan held her first solo art exhibition. The critics were brutal. They tore her work apart, calling it chaotic, undisciplined, meaningless. Anne watched from the corner, his heart aching for his friend. But when he found her after the show, she wasn't crying. She was smiling. Genuine, radiant smile. "They didn't get it," she said with a shrug. "And that's okay. I didn't make it for them." In her smile, Anne finally understood. This wasn't a battle to be won. There was no grand victory, no trophy at the end. The goal wasn't to defeat the world or force it to change. The goal was simply not to surrender, not to let the world extinguish the small, steady flame of his own truth. Life didn't magically become easy, and still lived in an absurd world that often made no sense. But now, he was conscious of it. He walked through his days with an awareness he'd never had before. There was no soaring hope for a perfect future, but there was also no crushing despair. There was just living, existing, breathing, and being, right in the heart of the absurdity. On an ordinary Tuesday, Anne walked home from a job he still didn't love, past people who still didn't understand him. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He wasn't hurrying. He wasn't rushing toward anything or running away from anything. He was just walking. Each step was a small, quiet act of rebellion. A declaration that he was here. He was himself. And that was enough. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more reflections on finding your own way. Take care.